Good afternoon. I am Denise Rolark Barnes, publisher of the Washington Informer newspaper, and I'm here at We Act Radio Network. And we have a very serious discussion today about, can you imagine a world without banks? This is our Facebook Live digital town hall, and we're here really talking with folks from one of the oldest banking institutions in Washington, D.C., Industrial Bank. I am so excited to have, not to have this discussion, but to have experts with us today to talk about the issue of a world without banks. And we have with us Patricia Mitchell, who is the Executive Vice President of Industrial Bank. Welcome to the show. And Jackie Bowles, who is the Senior Vice President and Director of Retail Banking. So welcome.
Thank you.
You know, Industrial Bank, as I said, is the oldest black-owned bank in the District of Columbia, and actually in the D.C. metropolitan area. And the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation and Community Development Financial Institution. You're a member of both of those. You know, this conversation came about due to an article that was published in the Wall Street Journal. And it's a very serious article that was published about in the month of August. And the title of the article is Black-Owned Bank Struggle, Community Sounds Alarm. And I'm just going to take a minute to talk about what Sharon Nunn, the author or the reporter for this story, wrote in the lead paragraphs of that article. And she talked about the fact that there were 6 CEOs of black-owned banks who locked themselves in a New Orleans conference room for more than a day in late 2016, and surrounded by them were papers, drawing boards, and PowerPoints, which they used to strategize ways to reverse a trend 15 years in the making in the decline of their own banking sector. B. Doyle Mitchell, the president of Industrial Bank, was at that meeting, and I think what caused this crisis, which they've described in black banking, is that the number of black-owned banks operating in the U.S. has been dropping steadily for the past 15 years and fell to 23, and maybe 22 this year, the lowest level in recent history, according to the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. And that has left many African-American communities short of access to capital and traditional financial services, according to some banking experts. So this is an opportune time to really talk about how we reverse this trend. And so I'd like to, again, welcome the both of you and give you an opportunity to tell me a little bit about yourselves, how you got into the banking business, and most importantly, why is it important to have black banking institutions in the black community? And Patricia, I'll start with you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Patricia Mitchell, as Denise said, and I'm the Executive Vice President at Industrial Bank. And it was, my grandfather was one of the founders of the bank, Jesse Mitchell. The bank started in 1934 because there was not any place where blacks could go in the Washington, D.C. area to borrow money. They could deposit money anywhere, but they could not borrow money. And there was no black bank there at that time. Prior to 1934, there was a black bank called Industrial Savings Bank that opened in 1913, and then it closed in 1932 when President Roosevelt came into office and during the Depression, and he declared all of the banks in the country to close until the federal government gave the okay to open. And then Industrial Savings Bank here in Washington, D.C. was not given the okay to open, so that left this whole area with no bank and no place for blacks to borrow money. So my grandfather and other men, because there weren't women necessary, a lot of women doing that kind of thing then.
And we certainly want to give a hand clap to you for keeping the tradition going as a woman.
So they opened Industrial Bank of Washington, and now we are Industrial Bank. So the importance of why the bank opened then is just as important as it is now, and that is to lend money in areas, in financial deserts, in wards 7 and 8, to small businesses and to mortgages so that people can buy their homes and small businesses can grow, because black banks and community banks in general do most of their lending to small businesses. Last year, we lent 76% of our dollars to small businesses, and that's businesses with revenues less than $1 million. And that really is the backbone of this country, is small businesses. Everyone thinks it's the Walmarts and the Kmarts and the Macy's of the world, but really most of the businesses in this country are small businesses.
Jackie, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Good morning, thank you. So my name's Jacqueline Bowles. I'm the Senior Vice President of Retail Banking. I've been with Industrial since 2009, and from my perspective, I love the community involvement, the commitment that we have to the community. And so just to piggyback on what Patricia said, we provide financial literacy, which is critical in our community, the lack of education relative to finances. And so we are a relationship bank. We meet the needs of the community. We're out in the community in all areas and all aspects. We work closely with the church community, with nonprofit organizations, with schools, just to be able to provide that access to information that is so relative to entrepreneurship, to home ownership. Just being able to run a decent household, a family household, we provide those basic skills.
So the question that didn't get answered, because we know that this is a Facebook Live interview, town hall, but some people might be curious about how each of you got into banking. I know you had the family relationship, but
I did, and actually I never planned to go into banking, to be honest.
that's what I'm going to say. A lot of times the kids run away and do something else, but yeah.
And I actually went to school for design and merchandising,
Okay.
And after I graduated, I needed a job. So I had asked my father, I said, can I have a job? And so he gave me a job, and it was part-time, and then it became full-time, and then I looked up 30 years later, and this is what I'm doing. But when I was a teenager, though, I did work at the bank in the summertime, and one of the things that I always enjoyed was how everybody knew everybody, and how we were really able to help people in need, and our seniors, if they came in and asked for huge sums of money, and senior citizens didn't need that large amount of money. Back then, we were allowed to call their family and say, why does your mother need $5,000 in cash? And we were able to say, no, I'm not giving it to you, because somebody really may be trying to defraud them. So I really enjoyed just the closeness, and everybody knew everybody.
Okay. And Jacqueline, how about yourself?
Sure. So I graduated from Bowie State University
Okay.
and was working in a retail store called Mandy at the time over in Largo. And I then went to Bank of America, went through their MAPS program, went through a couple of other financial institutions, and then landed here where I'm living my dreams, primarily because of the community involvement and just being able to really feel the impact of working for a minority bank. I see what happens. I see lives being transformed. I see people making strategic moves financially as a result of their interactions with associates that work at Industrial Bank, and the impact that we have.
Great background. I want those of you all who are in the Facebook viewing audience to know that in the Industrial Bank's digital team is actively monitoring and responding to questions via Industrial Bank's Facebook Live and WEAC Radio's YouTube Live. So know that we are we're looking out for your questions, and we're glad that you've joined us. And if we are unable to give you an immediate response, we don't want you to think that we've forgotten about you, that the team will respond to you soon after the programming, but make sure that we hear from you. So we want to begin with the fact that in the District of Columbia, particularly in Ward 3, there are 74 banks and 141 actually ATMs. We want to contrast that to a community like Ward 7, where there's only one bank and 2 ATMs. Now, we are actually here in Ward 8 on Martin Luther King Avenue, where WEAC Radio is located, and we are fortunate to have more banking institutions, but I think we're more fortunate because we also have Industrial Bank right around the corner on Good Hope Road. But I want to ask you, what do you think the impact of what we're calling now financial deserts, what kind of impact is that having on minority communities particularly, but on communities in general?
Sure. So It's critical. It's a detrimental impact. The distance, number one, to be able to get to an institution that's able to, supply financial resources that you need and financial, solutions. But secondly, those individuals that don't have access to a bank, they're using alternative banking measures. And on average are spending in excess of $800 on an annual basis. Money orders, check cashing locations. And so it has a detrimental effect. Then there's the unawareness and the lack of trust because they don't have experience with a well-trusted or a bank or a facility that operates with integrity and ethics as Industrial Bank does. And so to answer your question, it has a detrimental effect. Some of the things that we do to reach those people, we host a variety of free seminars, first-time homebuyer seminars, small business expos, realtor breakfasts, just basic financial literacy. We had one at 11th and U Street not too long ago that Patricia was the keynote speaker that went exceptionally well. And so we meet our community where they are. We rotate these seminars so that we're able to reach those that may not otherwise be able to, come to the bank. We have strategic partnerships that are able to, talk to those people that are unbanked and give them second chances. And so we realize the detrimental effect and are doing everything that we can on a daily basis to counter that.
And Patricia, I just want to ask, as you give your answer, to also respond to the fact that, Industrial had his landmark bank, one there on 11th and U, and then, of course, on Georgia Avenue. But the bank has expanded its footprint. And so as you respond, can you talk about why you selected the communities that you went to serve?
Well, the bank, as you said, the landmark office is at 11th and U, and that was in the heart of the black community in 1934. That's where all the blacks did business, and blacks did business with each other. And that's why they knew each other. And there was two primary black communities at that time, and that was the Shaw neighborhood, and the other primary black community was Georgetown, which is hard for some people to believe, but it was. And so it just made sense that we would have our bank there where everybody knew each other, everybody did business with each other. And the other, in reference to Georgia Avenue, that was, we opened that branch in 1962. And that was a changing neighborhood at that time. It's changing again, but it was a changing neighborhood then. And in order to buy that building, we had to have somebody pose as white in order to buy that building because the owner would not sell it to blacks.
Wow. Amazing. Yeah. So, but again, with this, I want you to expound upon, what it means to have a financial desert. We talk about food deserts, and they seem to overlay each other. Where there's a food desert, there's financial desert, and we'll probably come up with other terms as things go on. But what does that mean, a financial desert?
Well, to piggyback what Jackie was saying, in terms of Ward 7 and 8, if we're not here, then we're not making loans to small businesses. And again, I cannot stress how critical that is because, as I said, the small businesses is really the backbone of this country, and most of our black businesses are small businesses. It's also important that we support one another as if like we did in the 1934s and like they did in Tulsa, Oklahoma on Black Wall Street, where all the businesses were supporting one another. And when desegregation came, then blacks had more options, and so that's when the decline of financial institutions and educational institutions started to decline in terms of support.
Wow. So community development financial institutions invest about 60% of their assets in local and small businesses. You made a very emphatic point about that. But what are the greatest benefits of investing money through a community bank? For those who, we in some sense, we have arrived in some ways. We have larger businesses. And so what is the benefit of actually investing in a community bank?
Well, the more money that's deposited in our bank, the more money we get to lend out. Okay. That's banking 101.
Right.
If we don't have deposits, we can't lend. And we do a lot of lending. Most of our lending is in Washington, D.C. and Maryland. And with a lot of those dollars going to Prince George's County. So if we don't have those dollars, we cannot lend. We do a lot of mortgages, commercial loans, SBA loans, and commercial real estate. That is, in churches. Oh my goodness, I cannot forget about the churches, because we've been lending to churches since the very beginning in 1934. In fact, we were lending to churches when larger majority banks did not want to lend to churches because they were always nervous that they may be on the front page of a newspaper, that they had to foreclose on a church. And none of them wanted that reputation. And they would call us and ask if we would do the lending to the churches. They would keep the deposits for their customer, and it would still be their customer, but we make the loans. And so we've always done lending to churches. Now majority banks find how lucrative it is, and now everybody's lending to churches.
Right.
And if I could just add one thing, like Patricia said, we need deposits. But what I've been finding at the branch level is that our community will come in and they'll open a checking account and say, I've done my part. You know, I put $100 or $500 into the account and I've done my part. And for a bank, deposits, just a single server account is like a liability because it costs us money to maintain those accounts. And so really, if I had a call to action, it would be to allow us to be your top choice bank, to be your top wallet card, the card that you swipe when you have your transactions, the accounts that you use to pay your bills, the place that houses your savings account and your credit cards. And so we need the full relationship in order to be able to have the impact that we're speaking about today. So just having a simple account with us and putting a small deposit in doesn't really move the mark anyways, but we really need to have that relationship, that household in totality.
So, were you getting ready to add a point? Yeah. So that brings me to the next question about access to finances in the African American communities. I mean, are we short on assets and traditional financial services? I mean, could you survive off of investments by just black folks?
Well, the community has changed a lot, and although we are a black bank, we're also a community bank.
Okay.
And so we don't try to survive off of just black people, even though we want black people, but also everybody to support us, because we really are a community bank. And the demographics, as you know, in D.C. have changed so much around our banks. I mean, we want to support them as well.
Do you think our community as African Americans, do you think that we really understand what the crisis is? I mean, we don't hear these numbers often, like the Wall Street Journal article from 100 and whatever that number was it 100 and originally the number of banks, and now we're down to 22 or 23, and that number seems to be moving. The needle seems to be moving in the wrong direction pretty fast. Is our community immune or not understanding what this crisis
There
is?
were 55 black banks in the U.S. when I started in banking in the 80s. And now it's down to 22. And we lost 2 black banks this year. One in Chicago, which they were talking about in the article, but also the other one is in Virginia. I can't think of the name. Down near Lynchburg, Virginia. It was a small black bank that had been in existence for almost 100 years. So we lost 2 this year, whereas the other minorities, the other minority communities, their banks are increasing. So there are 75 Asian American banks right now. There are 39 Hispanic banks and 18 Native American banks. And those minorities haven't even been in this country as long as we have. So we're going in one direction and they're going in another direction. But that's because their dollar stays in their communities longer. In the Asian community, their dollar stays in their community almost 30 days. The dollar in our community stays 6 hours. So, and people don't really think about it, and they don't know that that's what the statistic is. But if you think about, okay, when I get my paycheck, what do I do with it? Okay, do I spend it at a black business, or am I at the restaurants and lounges that are majority owned? And the grocery stores, and we don't have a lot of grocery stores like we once did in our communities. So when I go grocery shopping with my paycheck, where are you going? Well, you're going to Giant or Whole Foods or Safeway. So the dollar just doesn't stay in our community very long.
I think it was a great book that was
Maggie
written by
Anderson.
Maggie Anderson's,
Yes.
you know, Our Black
Yes.
Year.
It was
And
a
I know
beautiful
that
book.
you all have been working with her
Yes.
in her mission, and actually New York Life as well. And no plug to them necessarily, but a plug because they were successful. And so that's what it seems like the banks are doing now, trying to tell that story
Yes.
of how difficult it is for us to do business with ourselves, but the fact that if we don't do it,
Right.
then we will have no one to do business with.
Absolutely.
Right. And so we talked about your U Street location. We also talked about Georgia Avenue. Tell us where else you can find an industrial
Sure.
community bank.
So we have one in Northeast, near Benning Road, right by the shrimp boat.
And that's been there since 1965.
Wow, yeah,
Yes.
okay. Metro Center, right across from Metro Center on 13th and F Street. We also have Anacostia, 1800 Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue. And then we have two in Prince George's County, one in Oxon Hill, Maryland, right off of John Hanson Lane across from Rivertown, and Forestville, off of Pennsylvania Avenue by Marlowe Furniture.
Right, right. I think the southeast one is on Good Hope Road.
Yes.
So
Around the corner
right
from
around
where
the
we
corner.
are.
Exactly,
Right,
exactly. And so, and that's the question I asked before. I mean, industrial has expanded its footprint. I mean, you have your options. They're
Yes.
available to people not only in the district but into Prince George's County. What has that meant for the bank?
I just want to say an opportunity to really give that bear hug to an expanded community. Because we are growing in Prince George's County, we are participating in many of their organizations, sitting on many of their boards. We're involved in the progressive movement within the district and within the county. And so it just gives us the opportunity to, be heard and be seen and be experienced by a larger population.
And we do want to do more business in the areas that are considered financial deserts here in Wards 7 and 8. So we want to lend money so that the businesses here can prosper.
I know that your brother, Doyle, is out across the country trying to spread the word about the importance of black banks
Absolutely.
and community banks. And, I'm wondering what is being said? What is the message? You talked a little bit about it before, but what is the message that we want our communities to understand, or the community in general, to understand about why it's there's a necessity right now to make that investment?
To provide so that businesses are able to gain more capital, because lack of capital is a big problem in our communities. To have more small businesses and to have traditional financial services, as Jackie was saying earlier. If they don't have traditional financial services, then they're paying high rates in order to cash checks, et cetera. Going to the check cashing places. So that's really the importance of black banks. And as I said, the financial deserts, we want to lend money to those places. We've always lent money to those kind of neighborhoods.
So we've gotten a couple questions from our Facebook viewers, and one of the questions is, can a national or multinational think tank be convened to develop a strategy for creating a black secondary market? One, if you have some idea of what this question might mean as it relates to secondary market. And then I would think that the think tank began with those 6
Yes.
bank presidents
Yes.
in New Orleans who sat down to figure out how we're going to address this issue.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly the kind of thing that they talk about, and we talk about at our the National Bankers Association is the organization for minority banks, the Association for Minority Banks. And that discussion comes up all the time. That's why the 6 individuals got together, and how can we help our black banks when they're in trouble. And so we're always having those kind of discussions.
Is there a role for others to play in that conversation, though?
Investing in black banks is a huge need. It might be people with large sums of money that want to invest. Large banks can actually invest in smaller banks and get CRA credit, or individuals may want to buy stock. I have occasionally I'll have somebody call and say, I want to buy some stock at your bank. And so we can make that happen because we do have stock available. So if somebody wants to do that, let us know.
Good. And what would they would just call the bank?
Yep, and they can ask for me.
Good. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So, and then what about also, which was another question, how does Industrial Bank CRA Compliance, which is the Community Reinvestment Act,
Yes.
how does the compliance metrics compare with those of other banks?
Well, we typically get an outstanding.
So let's talk about what CRA is. First of all, if you could just explain to our viewers, what does that?
Investing in low to moderate income neighborhoods.
Okay, and is that now required? Is there some percentage or
Yes.
banks that are required to do to meet CRA standards?
That's correct, and that's why there are some banks out there that want to invest in certain banks because they get CRA credit for
Okay,
it. So if a large majority bank wants to invest in an industrial bank, they'll get CRA credit. Yes, or do business in certain neighborhoods, make loans in certain neighborhoods, they get CRA credit for it. So that's the incentive for them to do that. Now, if there wasn't CRA, would they do that? Maybe not.
But you all have to meet the same standard.
We do.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so how are you all doing as it relates to your CRA?
Yep, we have
percentage?
outstanding
Okay.
CRA. But this is what we've always done. We've always invested loans in places like Ward 7 and 8, in churches, small business, mortgages, so that people could buy their homes. And when I first got into banking, there was the term redlining, where you were discriminating against making a loan on Martin Luther King Avenue. So banks had to be really careful about that, and that's how CRA came into place.
It's interesting because the Wall Street Journal article actually alluded to the fact that redlining is returning. Have you seen evidence of that in the D.C. area?
I'm not so sure that in Washington, D.C. itself it exists, because a lot of the neighborhoods have changed. Prince George's County may, because they have not changed as much as Washington, D.C. So to qualify for, you were mentioning about CRA, to qualify for CRA points, you don't get as many points because all of DC has changed, and the income has changed in the different neighborhoods.
But I'm sure that this is kind of might be a little bit off topic, but then I think it's probably where industrial comes in. A lot of black-owned property, land in the district has been lost.
Yes, it has.
And then for those who are actually trying to invest in the district,
Yes.
sometimes it's difficult. And acknowledge, you're agreeing, so
Yes.
acknowledging that, what is the bank doing to try to keep a balance?
Well, in reference to the black-owned property, we do have estate planning seminars so that people can plan, and we do that every year so that people can plan, do estate planning, because that's one of the things that's really lost in our community.
Meaning that people die and the property's lost to taxes, or what happens?
Or, well, I see where a lot of the heirs start to fight over the idea of getting money. Some want to keep the property, some don't, and they end up selling it, and usually don't necessarily sell it for as much as they could actually get. But some of the heirs might want the idea of getting $10,000 is a lot of money to some heirs. A lot of properties have turned over and are no longer in the black community. I see that quite a bit.
So, but when, again, the thing about black banks or our community banks is that there are folks who sometimes are intimidated by walking into a bank. We, no matter what, as black people, sometimes have a sense of pride where we don't want to ask for things, and we don't want to ask for as much as we can get. So how recognizing that is, do you all recognize that, and what is it that industrial can do or does to make it easier for our community to do its banking?
Sure. So like I was saying earlier, we go to where our customers are.
Okay.
And so we provide, on a quarterly basis, we actually have a rotation of free seminars, such as the estate planning seminar, first-time home buyer, where we have our branch managers are present, the appropriate representatives that work in those particular fields, whether it's business, estate planning, insurance, are present to be able to have those one-on-one interactions with those participants, because I think that relationship is critical. And when you have someone that you're able just to sit down and have a conversation with, that fear sort of melts away a little bit, and you feel more comfortable and you're able to disclose more. So I really believe that relationship is key, which is why we host those seminars.
The other thing that I'm seeing is with millennials, they're not necessarily trying to buy property. There's and you know this, there is a whole lot of rental apartments out there that cost a lot
Oh
money.
yeah,
and people
as much as a mortgage. That's
yes,
this
and
is
more
a mortgage.
than,
Yeah,
and more than.
right.
So somehow we got to figure out how to shift their thinking from renting to buying. But we do come across millennials that are very content with renting.
Right. Not even owning cars. They Uber. They like to use Uber
Right.
and Lyft, and
Right.
so.
Well, so does my mother. So I'm,
Okay.
but so, one of the
She's excused. She's
yeah,
older.
she, and she owns her house.
Right,
Exactly. But how are we? A lot of folks have this belief that our banks, our community banks, our small banks can't provide the same services that the larger banks can, and that they utilize other banks out of the need for convenience, online banking and all these other services. What does industrial say? What is your response to that argument about why they may not be coming to industrial?
Well, we provide all the same services
That's
as
right.
other banks. We taught deposits, and I already spoke about the loans, but we also provide mobile banking, online banking. What other services?
Remote deposit capture. Actually, let me just take a moment to tell you, we actually have a very robust rewards checking program called Kasasa, and we are paying 2.5% APY on checking account balances up to $15,000, or giving 3% cash back on everyday purchases if a customer meets 3 small qualifications. One is that they log on to their online account portal at least once a month, and most of us check our account balance daily.
Right.
Number 2, that you agree to receive e-statements, as we're trying to be more environmentally conscious. Instead of receiving paper statements, if you receive e-statements, which are secure and efficient. And then the third is something else that we do every day: swipe that debit card. So if you swipe your debit card 2.5 times per week, and you meet those 3 qualifications, we will pay you that robust interest rate. Plus, we realize that we're a community bank and we have limited ATM access. And so we will refund up to $25 monthly if a customer has to use alternative ATMs. And so we compensate for, the things that we may have, shortfalls that we may have. But like Patricia said, as far as the products, the everyday products and services, we have those. We have those. And so customers just need to come in, experience it, ask some questions, visit our website, and, just give us an opportunity.
So banks remind me, particularly the smaller and black-owned banks, remind the crisis that you're facing, reminds us of the crisis that we in the black press may be facing, what the black church is facing. It's a whole different mindset now about how we gain information and how we get services. What is the future of what industrial bank's going to do, or banking in general? What's the future look like in banking that you all are preparing for?
Well, we do have to continue to invest a lot of money in technology, and that is it's an ongoing issue. It's always about technology and the services that meet basically our millennials, because they're our future. So, and it's just it's an ongoing challenge, but that's what we do. We have an advisory board of millennials, so that we meet with them once a quarter and hear from them what is it they want.
Right.
And everybody on our advisory board, they're not necessarily customers.
Right.
And this was the brainchild of our president, Doyle, my brother, and he intentionally had people on the board that are not customers. So some are customers, some are not. And even if they had never heard of the bank, that's what we want to know too, because not everybody has heard of our bank, Industrial Bank. So technology, and that's the technology, and millennials are the conversations that come up all the time.
So with that millennial, I'm impressed by that, a millennial advisory board. What has been one thing maybe that you can think of that they've come up with that the bank actually tried? I mean, we know not everything works, and sometimes it does, but it's that willingness to try. I think it's good that you tried by actually having the board. Is there anything that they came up with?
Well, we changed our website as a result of a meeting. They had some ideas of how we should do it, and we did. And then they want us to always have a call to action. That was that came across, and we've only been doing it for not even a year yet. I don't think so. It's still coming along. We've probably had 4 meetings or so, but that is what we've done so far.
Yeah. The other thing that we learned is that they really do care about what's going on in the community, and so they gave us humongous kudos for our community involvement and the services that we provide, not necessarily related to finance, but just being hands-on, just meeting the needs of the community.
So I don't know what our time is like, and so we're going to do a little time check, but I do want to ask those, if there are any more questions for Patricia or Jacqueline, to go ahead and submit those questions. And of course, if we don't get to those questions, we will get to them eventually with the IB team. But you mentioned call to action, and so that's, I don't want to leave this conversation without you all giving the call to action, because again, and this has been a great conversation, but we cannot overlook the fact that what we're looking at is a crisis, and I want to really leave that on the minds of our viewers and listeners, that there is a crisis when it comes to the continued existence of black banks. So what would be your call to action?
Yes, I do. So first and foremost, because I'm able to interact with consumers on a daily basis, and I just see, in general, financial detriment in households, my first call to action is for individuals to have a relationship with their money, to reach out to us for financial literacy. We provide those sessions free of charge. We have everything from Banking 101, savings and investments, understanding and managing your credit, home buyer seminars. We are a full service bank. We are here to help people meet their financial dreams. And so my first call to action is you have to do something different. And it begins with yourself, putting yourself on a budget, tracking your spending so that you can create a savings account. My second call to action would be to please come and support your local community bank. And if you're in our area, come to Industrial Bank. When you support the bank, you are actually doing so many things that you're not even aware of. You're creating jobs. You're affecting how our youth view themselves, because now they have a job and they're not out on the corner. Now they see a future because they see different businesses sprouting up in their communities. And so because we're able to reinvest in those jobs, we need more customers to generate those relationships, those deposits, and we're able to then give out loans, whether it's a mortgage or a small business loan. So we have to do something different. We have to seek out minority-owned businesses in our community. And one of the things that I love about our president is that he does not only talk the talk, but he walks the walk. And if I can just give you one example, there's a black-owned paper company up in Columbia, Maryland, Freedom Paper Company, owned by Camus Muhammad. We have severed our ties with a local a vendor, and we now bank-wide utilize Camus Muhammad's business. And so it begins there, just doing something different, making a conscious and intentional decision to support and to do your part in our community. That's my ask.
And to give you some statistics that
Thank you.
piggyback what Jackie is saying about other minorities, Asian banks are over $1 billion. Okay, well, first let me just tell our listeners and our viewers that our bank is $400 million in assets, because we didn't even talk about the size of our bank, and with 7 locations. So Asian banks are over $1 billion. The largest is $35 billion in total assets. 3 are over $5 billion. Hispanic banks are over $1 billion as well. We don't have any black banks that are over $1 billion. The largest in the Hispanic community is $31 billion, and 6 are over $5 billion. The 22 African American banks right now that are still in existence total $4.9 billion.
So with the Hispanic and the Asian, to me, it triggers the thought of global business. And where are the black banks when it comes to their global, let me know if I'm off course on this question, but with their global interaction, because while I know that there are a lot of resources here, a lot of people send money home, a lot of money sent back and forth. There are investments particularly in the Asian community, a lot of investment in real estate in the United States. So I can kind of see why there would be that large amount of investment or the value of the banks. But where do the black banks stand?
Well, we're just here in the U.S. Most are, so we don't do globally a lot of business, but we can do anything in the U.S. People can open accounts online, any place in the country. Our lending, though, is primarily in this area, from Richmond to Baltimore. That's where our lending is primarily. And then where black banks are located, it's primarily on the East Coast, and Louisiana. There's a large black bank there, and there's one in California, but most of them on the East Coast. And there's a few, and some people don't know this, that there are black banks still in existence that are older than we are. Mechanics and Farmers in Durham, North Carolina, started in 1908. Wow. And there's several. I think there's probably about 5 that are older than we are. Yeah.
So is that an opportunity, though? I mean, as we look at a continent like Africa, where we talk about the poverty there, but there's a lot of wealth there, and there's a lot of business going back and forth now, investments. Is there an opportunity for black banks to be a part of that?
I'm not sure if there's an opportunity. We would need to grow in size in order to do more, to explore more things, because there's also a lot of regulatory issues to be concerned with. And if we can grow in size, and if the community can help us grow in size, then we certainly can do a lot more things like that, because regulation is big, and that's one of the things that's gotten I won't say out of control, but I'll just say it's growing.
Well, that was where I was going next. Actually, the impact of regulation. I'm sure it's become more complex, and I'm wondering what factor it's playing in the demise of some of our banks.
Well, it means more expenses. It means more software. It means more people to just do that aspect of the business, behind the scenes, dealing with regulatory issues, software, and more human resources. So that one of the things that the black banks we have discussed over and over again is how we can combine our back offices. And we spend a lot more time talking about those kind of things, and want to spend more time talking about business development.
Right.
But we have to spend a lot of time talking about risk management, regulatory issues, and the software to support all of that.
Is it if you could think of what, not only in that regard, but I guess I'm wondering, do the banks have lobbyists, folks who are really the black bankers who are actually lobbying for them on Capitol Hill and in state houses, and are the legislators sensitive to the needs of black banks?
Well, that's what the National Bankers Association does. That's the association of minority banks, all minority banks. But most of the members are black banks, because we being black banks started the association in 1930, somewhere around 1932, I think. But that's what the National Bankers Association does, is doing lobbying.
They're the lobbying arm for you all. And is there a champion on the Hill who actually is looking out for the?
Maxine Waters,
Okay.
she's one of the champions.
She's chair or a member of the financial committee.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, all right.
And then there was one other thing I wanted to say about that.
So while you're thinking, though, Jacqueline, you mentioned jobs. If one were thinking about pursuing a career in banking, what are the potential areas of employment?
Sure. Because we're a community bank, all of our departments are local, so the opportunities are vast. So not only do you have those positions that you see when you walk into a branch environment, but we have our marketing department, our accounting department, our legal department, real estate, human resources. And so when we're out in the community, we talk to, particularly when we're on college campuses, the career opportunities within a community bank, is just plentiful. And so it will range depending on what the position is. So for a bank teller, cash handling experience, preferably a high school diploma at minimum. When you get to the personal banker, one that opens accounts and originates loans, we would like to see some type of experience in that. College degree would be nice, same for branch manager. But outside of the environment, it probably would be just at least 2 years prior experience and or education in the field that you're looking for.
And as go ahead.
And we have needs for people that all the back office people. It's not just who the front facing people, but underwriters, janitors, couriers. We have all, and as Jackie said, the human resources. So we have 115 employees that help run the bank.
And it sounds like you're going to need more people in the area of technology.
Yes, and we do have a nice sized staff of technology, but we always have to stay abreast of what the latest trend is, because it just keeps coming faster and faster.
But do you think, and I have to tell this story, I mean, for those of us who have children, we all are considered walking banks to them, financial institutions, right? And so, whenever there's a crisis, they call, Mom Bank of America or Dad, Industrial Bank, whatever the case may be. And so now they've come up with all these new apps, right? Where money can be transferred
Just like
the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
How does that impact? How will that impact our banks?
Opportunity. I think that it gives us an opportunity, like Patricia said, to be able to offer more innovative products and services. Access and convenience are a priority right now, and so people need to be able to conduct transactions, as they're boarding a bus or as they're sitting at a red light. And so we have to make sure that we're available, providing those type of services and that access for them.
But this isn't
upon
considered
demand.
a threat to the bank?
I don't know. Would you say it's a threat for us?
Well, we do have to do. We have to monitor all the transactions, because fraud is another really big issue for banks. A lot of fraud and a lot of dollars. And being a small bank, you know, a $50,000 fraud transaction can really impact us in a major way. So there is a lot of fraud. That's why there are back office people that are monitoring different things. But in order to continue to build our relationships, we have to offer that. That's why we have the mobile banking. I mean, we have pop money. So we have all of those, the things that basically the community wants.
So do you see, I mean, once upon a time, and I remember years ago, before there were ATMs, there was a concern that the brick and mortar bank, regardless of whether it was a black bank, community bank, whatever bank, was going to go away.
Yes.
You're still here, despite in lesser numbers. But do you see a time when the banking institution as we see it today will look different, and you qualify that still as opportunity? Does that still mean, so long as people invest, that there's still an industrial presence?
Well, it means that they do look different. We just did our branch at 11th and U. We spent a lot of money renovating that because it needed a facelift. So branches are looking trendier. And
I must say, though, I like that the facade is still the same. I don't know if it's historic preservation or what.
No,
but-
actually, we're working on the facade now.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
You know,
Okay.
it's
Oh, well.
and we're cleaning it up. We're
Yeah.
not changing the
Okay.
whole outside because it is a historic building, but we're cleaning it up
Okay.
so it'll look nice and clean. And we're going to put the clock back up. People were very disappointed the clock came down, but we only took it down to clean it.
Okay.
And once we took it down, then people thought we were closed.
Right.
So, but that's going back up probably the end of October. But the branches are looking trendier, and also branches don't have to be as large because not as many people come in. So I know since I've been in banking for the last 30 plus years, there was a trend of banks opening more branches, and then they had fewer branches, and they had larger branches, and then they had smaller branches because people weren't coming in, and now they want people to come in so they can cross sell. So we've had a lot of trends over the last 30 years.
And even hours, banking hours
Yes.
have gone
Right.
from longer to shorter, back to getting longer
They
again.
have.
to
Longer again,
going-
that's
yeah.
right.
When I
That's
first
right.
started in banking, the hours were 10 to 2.
Wow.
And then we went 9 to 5, and then we went 9 to 3. Now we're 9 to 5.
Right.
Good.
Now- Now we're not. Yes, now we're 9 to 5, and on Fridays 9 to 6, and then on Saturdays. And that was another trend. Saturdays. When I first started in banking, we had Saturday hours, and then the trend in banking was, okay, well, we can save money, and this was throughout banking. We can save money, so let's cut out the Saturday hours. So we cut out Saturday hours, and then the trend was, let's have more hours. So then banks started opening on Saturdays.
Yes.
And some of the branches were open, and not our branches, but just some of the banks had branches that were 9 to 4 on Saturdays, and then they cut it back to 9 to 12, and 9 to 1. So
Yeah, well, as consumers, we've seen all that,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
and we've, I think, appreciate the fact that industrial has heard from its customers and is flexible. and
which is
moves.
why we're open
That's
on
right.
Saturdays
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
And we've been open on Saturdays for a while.
Yeah, a long time.
So we got a question here, which is how do we address issues of retirement, long-term care, and wealth accumulation that are affecting the African American community?
Well, that's what we do in our estate planning seminar that we have often, because that's a huge need.
Yes.
And we also have a relationship with New York Life to assist with long-term care and annuities and what was
Life insurance, all those
Li-
different things. We're having an upcoming seminar, date to be determined, in November at our 11th and U Street location about the importance of retirement and how to better position yourself for retirement. So if the customers stay tuned and visit our website, as soon as we have a date within the next 2 weeks, that will be posted on our website as
Because
well.
I don't think people are really in my generation are really planning for retirement like they probably should. Because once you get to be a certain age, I don't know that my philosophy is I wouldn't take out a 30-year mortgage anymore.
Right.
But yet sometimes people do. That means you're paying a mortgage until, what, you're 80?
Right.
So there's always, and a lot of times loan officers don't bring this up as an option. You can do a 15-year mortgage, but you can also do a 20 or 25-year mortgage amortization, which is not usually brought up as an option. The rate is the same typically as a 30-year mortgage, but you can do 20 or 25 years, or you can pay down, give an extra payment every year, which is supposed to cut your mortgage from 30 years to 23 years. If you just do one extra payment a year, and you can do that directly to principal.
So I think, that is a grave concern, wealth accumulation. I think that we've seen another era of a loss of wealth. And then you talk, Patricia, about, I'm going to put myself in our generation, but our generation that's not prepared for retirement. But I'm even much more concerned about the millennials
Right.
who, at least we started off with the knowledge that we had to get a job or work someplace where we would begin to prepare for retirement. I mean, whether it was Social Security, what have you. Well, they're more entrepreneurial.
Yes.
And so a lot of
Yes.
what we came into this retirement period with is, I'm concerned about whether they're going to be prepared for it.
And a lot of them probably don't even have health insurance
Exactly. Yeah.
because they're self-employed.
Right.
So that's a
Well,
little scary.
there's that penalty that you have to pay that's enough to
Right.
convince them that they
Go
need
ahead,
to do
insurance,
something. But
yeah,
you're right.
yeah,
You're right.
yeah.
So I'm hoping that these workshops are being well attended.
Yes.
And at the same
We do.
time that you're sharing with those who are participating the need to support a black bank like Industrial.
Yes.
All of
yes.
our workshops
have
are
been very well.
are very well attended. They are.
And I wanted you, Jacqueline, also talk about some creative things that you'd mentioned with the AME Church.
Oh, sure.
And I think the, what is it, in Prince
collective
George's?
empowerment.
The collective empowerment. Just, we've got a couple of minutes left. Can you
Sure.
just address those?
Sure. So Industrial Bank, actually, for 20 years, since the inception of the Collective Empowerment Group today, which formerly was known as the CBG, Collective Banking Group, we've been the primary bank with them since inception. And really what that is, it's just a group of pastors, ministers, and primarily Prince George's County. There are some from District of Columbia, a few from Charles County, that come together monthly. And we meet the first Friday of every month just to discuss the role, the responsibility, and how we can work collaboratively to address a myriad of needs within our communities. So that's been very, very powerful. That's been very well attended, and we've really built some relationships and addressed some specific problems in our communities. The AME conference is something that's in generation right now, actually. And so Bishop Davis, who is the bishop of the 2nd District AME conference, along with Reverend Jonathan Weaver, and then the presidents of some of the banks that Patricia mentioned earlier, Harbor Bank, Mechanics and Farmers, Industrial Bank, we are having sort of a pledge where those churches and their members will locate their community bank within their neighborhoods and go to them first. And see, that's the challenge. If we were the top choice bank, things would look so different now in our communities. And so I'm really, really hopeful and feel really confident that with this pledge and with this commitment and us reaching out to some of these AME churches and letting them experience what it really is to have a relationship bank, a community bank that cares and has such deep roots. I'm just so excited to see what that will look like. And so we're actually always trying to form partnerships and bring our resources to the community that doesn't necessarily walk into the door to get ourselves known, because, I mean, we have a powerful blow if we just come together with, cooperative economics and collective responsibility and just working together. Imagine where we can be in the next 10 years.
So I don't want this program to end with folks thinking that industrial is going to close its doors tomorrow.
Oh,
So we've got a future.
yes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, all
As I
right.
said, we're 400 million in assets and still growing.
Okay.
And 7 branches,
Yes.
5 in the district and 2 in Prince George's County. And we're still always talking about different sites
Good.
for our banking centers.
Okay.
And we do a lot of mortgage and commercial real estate and church loans and SBA loans.
All right.
So
Well,
we're doing plenty of lending.
I wanted to end on a positive
Oh,
note
yeah,
because we are out of
absolutely.
time,
Yes.
but I want people to understand that this is a real crisis
Yes.
in the black community as it relates to black banks. If you know somebody, please go out and make an investment in the
Yes.
black bank, put your money there. Realizes this is very real, and we need your support. I want to thank the folks here at We Act Radio. Of course, I want to thank the two of you for being here.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Thank you.
everybody at Industrial Bank, and of course, myself, for joining us for this past hour. It's been a great experience, and you will hear more. So stay tuned.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Denise.